So in 3.3, we're going to be solving systems of inequalities. So systems were when we had the two equations. Inequalities, anybody remember what inequalities are?
Is that like the less than?
Less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. So in this section, we are going to be graphing. Our favorite. Alright, so we need to solve each system of inequalities by graphing. So we're just going to take it one equation at a time. So first I have x plus y is greater than or equal to 2. What do I need to do first in order to graph this? Y equals mx plus b, slope-intercept form. So this is first. So how do I get this to be y equals mx plus b? Subtract x on both sides. So I have y is greater than or equal to negative x plus 2. So what is my y-intercept? 2. So I'm going to put a point at 2 on the y-axis. What's my slope? Negative 1. So technically it's negative 1 over 1. So I'm going to go which way? Down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1. So remember, for inequalities, if it is greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, we put a solid line. If it's less than or greater than, we put a dotted line. So for this one, do I have a solid line or dotted line? Solid. So the solid line. Now, what was the last step we had to do whenever we graphed inequalities?
Draw the thing on shade.
Shade. We have to shade. So what number am I going to test to figure out where we shade?
0,
I'm going to plug in 0, 0. So for shading, I'm going to test 0, 0. So I'm going to plug in 0 for x and 0 for y. I'm going to plug it into the original in here. So I have 0 plus 0 is greater than or equal to 2. So 0 is greater than or equal to 2. Is this true? No, not true. So where am I going to shade? Where 0, 0 is or where it's not? Where it's not. So that would be over here.
Does it matter if you plug it into the original or the...
It doesn't matter. I always like to plug it into the original just in case I made a mistake like adding it here. So I would just plug it into the original. So that's just the first graph. Now we're going to do the second one. So the second one I'm going to do in green. So I have 2x plus y is less than or equal to 5. What's the first thing I need to do? Minus 2x on both sides. I want to get it into slope-intercept form. So I have y is less than or equal to negative 2x plus 5. What's my y-intercept? Positive 5. So I'm going to put a point at positive 5. What's my slope? Negative 2 over 1. So if it's negative, which way am I going to go? Down and to the right. You could go up and to the left, so just the opposite of both. But if it's negative, go down, and you always go to the right. So we're going to go down 2 to the right 1, down 2 to the right 1, down 2 to the right 1. So my line goes here. Is it a solid line or dotted line? Solid. This has the less than, so it is solid. Now to shade, what point should I plug in? 0, 0. So I have 2 times 0 plus y is 0. I'm plugging in 0 for x and y, is less than or equal to 5. So what's 2 times 0? 0, and 0 plus 0?
0.
So is 0 less than or equal to 5? Yes, this is true. So do I shade where 0, 0 is or where it's not? Where it is. So I'm shading over here on this side. Now, since it's a system of inequalities, it's like 2 graphs in one, we only care about the part that's overlapping. So I'm going to erase everything that's shaded that's not overlapping. Oh man, I just erased the inside on accident, but it's okay. So I'm going to shade what's not erase what's not overlapping out here, and I'm going to erase what's not overlapping out here. So the only part that I care about is that sliver in the middle that's overlapping. So that's our answer. All right, let's look at the next one. So do I have slope-intercept form already? Yep. So y is greater than x. What's my slope? 1. Because slope is your number in front of the x, so that's just 1 over 1. And what's my y-intercept? 0, because I'm not adding anything after. So I'm going to stay on 0 and go which direction? Up and right 1. So up 1, right 1, up 1, right 1. And then just connect your dots. Do I have a solid line or dotted line here? A dotted line. Because it is just greater than, this means I have a dotted line. Now I need a shade. What point should I test to see where I'm going to shade? Does my graph go through 0, 0? Yep, so I can't pick 0, 0. I have to pick something else.
0, 2, or 2, 0, or 2, 0.
I could pick 2, 0, so that would be right here. So 2, 0. So I'm plugging in 2 for x and 0 for y. So I have 0 is greater than 2. Is this true? No. So am I going to shade where 2, 0 is or where it's not? It's not true, so I shade where it's not. So that would be over here. Any questions on the first part? All right, next we're going to do the second equation. So I have y is less than x plus 1. Eli, what's my y-intercept? What's the one number that I have here in this equation? 1. So my y-intercept is 1. It's whatever you add after the x. So I'm going to cross the y-axis at 1. What is my slope here? My slope would be 1 over 1. So I'm going to go which direction? Up 1, right 1. So go up 1, right 1, up 1, right 1. Do these two lines cross each other? No. Is it a solid or dotted line? Dotted. It's a dotted line that's just right above. So even though they don't cross, I'm still doing the same thing. I just need to figure out where my shading parts overlap. What number should I plug in to test to see where I shade? 0, 0. Here I can plug 0, 0 in because my graph doesn't go through 0, 0. So I'm going to plug in 0 for x and 0 for y to see where I'm going to shade. So I have 0 is less than 0 plus 1. What's 0 plus 1? 1. Is 0 less than 1? Yep, that's true. So do I shade where 0, 0 is or where it's not? Where it is. So I'm going to shade down here. Where do these two shading regions overlap? In the middle part. So I'm going to erase everything else besides that middle part. And that's my answer. All right, so for the next one, what's the first thing I should do? Put it in slope-intercept form? Is it already in slope-intercept form? Yep. So what's my slope? -3/1. And what's my y-intercept? -1. So what do I plot first on my graph? The y-intercept. So I'm going to put a point on the y-axis at -1. And then how do I do the slope of -3/1? Always go to the right. So down 3 to the right 1. Down 3 to the right 1. Do I connect these with a solid line or dotted line? Solid line.
On the homework, can we just like point out the line and put like dotted line so it doesn't like look weird?
Well, you could dot your line on the homework, right?
Yeah, but it looks weird.
So this is a solid line because it has that equal to. And then next I need to figure out where I'm going to shade. So what do I plug in? 0, 0. So I'm going to plug in 0 for y and 0 for x. So 0 is greater than or equal to -3 times 0 minus 1. What's -3 times 0? And what's 0 minus 1? So is 0 greater than or equal to -1? Yep, it's greater than. So that's true. So do I shade where 0, 0 is or where it's not? Where it is. So I'm shading on the right side of my line here. All right, any questions on the first line? Let's do the second one. So I have y is less than x plus 2. Is this already in slope-intercept form? Yep. Victoria, what's my y-intercept? 2. Dania, what's my slope?
Slope, 1/1.
1/1. Awesome. So I'm going to put my y-intercept at 2. And my slope goes in which direction? Anybody? Up 1, right 1. So I'm going to go up 1, right 1, up 1, right 1, this way. Do I have a solid line or dotted line here? A dotted line because this is just less than, so it is dotted. So this needs to be a dotted line. There. Joshua, how do I figure out where I'm going to shade?
First you do not just
Anybody that can answer this question seriously? Noah. Plug in 0, 0. So I'm going to plug in 0 for x and 0 for y. So 0 less than 0 plus 2. What's 0 plus 2? 2. Is 0 less than 2?
No.
Yes, it is. So do I shade where 0, 0 is or where it's not? Where it is because it's true. So I shade over here. What's the last step that I have to do? Erase. That's not overlapping. So you only keep the parts that are shaded on both. Everything else gets erased. So I have y is less than 1/2 x minus 1. What's my y-intercept? -1. And what's my slope? 1/2. So I'm going to plot my y-intercept at -1. And my slope 1/2. So I'm going to go which way? Up 1, right 2. So I'm going to go up 1 to the right 2, up 1 to the right 2, up 1 to the right 2. Do I connect these points with a solid line or dotted line? Dotted line. Because it's just less than. So dotted line. Now to shade, what do? Plug in 0, 0. So I have 0 is less than 1/2 times 0 minus 1. What's 1/2 times 0? And 0 minus 1? So is 0 less than -1? Nope, it's not. So do I shade where 0, 0 is or where it's not? Where it's not. So that would be down below it here. So that's our first graph. Now let's see the second one. So y is greater than -3x plus 3. So what's my slope? -3/1. And what's my y-intercept? 3. So I'm going to cross the y-axis at 3. My slope is -3/1. So which direction am I going to go? Down 3, 1 to the right. So I'm going to go down 3, 1 to the right. Down 3, 1 to the right. Down 3, 1 to the right. Do I connect these lines with a solid line or the points with a solid line or dotted line? Dotted line. What's next? Shade. What point can I test to see where I shade? 0, 0. So I have 0 is greater than -3 times 0 plus 3. So 0 is greater than 3. Is this true? No, not true. So where do I shade? Where 0, 0 is or where it's not? Where it's not. So that's going to be on the right side over here. And then what's the last step? Erase the parts that don't overlap. Awesome. So I'm only keeping that section down the bottom right. All right, let's look at the next one. What do I need to do first here? Put it into y equals mx plus b form. So y plus 3x is less than or equal to 8. How do I put it into slope-intercept form? Subtract 3x. So y is less than or equal to -3x plus 8. What's my y-intercept? 8. And what's my slope? -3/1. So I'm going to put my first point at 8 on the y-axis. And then how do I do the slope of -3/1? Down 3 to the right 1. So I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3 to the right 1. Down 3 to the right 1. Down 3 to the right 1. Do I connect these points with a solid line or dotted line? Solid, because it has that equal to. So a solid line. What's next? Shade. So what can I test to shade? 0, 0. So I'm going to plug in 0 for x and 0 for y. So I have 0 plus 3 times 0.
Can you please send Vittorio a minute?
Leave your stuff. So 0 plus 3 times 0 would be 0 times 0. So is 0 less than or equal to 8? Is this true? Yes. So we shade where 0, 0 is or where it's not? Where it is. So I'm going to shade right on top of 0, 0 there.
When we solve for the zero shading part, do we use like the original?
I would plug it into the original.
Like, so you don't get to like the y equals mx.
You could, because you'll get the same thing, but just in case like you did your math wrong somewhere, I would just plug it into the 0, 0 one. Or to the original. Plug 0, 0 into the original. Alright, so next we have y minus 3 is greater than 2x. How do I put this into slope-intercept form? Add 3. So y is greater than 2x plus 3. What's my slope? 2 over 1. And what's my y-intercept? 3. So what's the first point I should put? Put a point at 3. And then how do I do the slope of 2 over 1? Up 2 over 1. So I'm going to go up 2 to the right 1, up 2 to the right 1. Do I connect these with a solid line or dotted line? Dotted line. Now I have to figure out where I'm going to shade. What do I plug in to see where I shade? 0, 0. So I have 0 minus 3 is less than or is greater than 2 times 0. So negative 3 is greater than 0. Is this true? No. So do I shade where 0, 0 is or where it's not? Where it's not. So that would be up here. And then what's my last step? Erase. Erase what's not overlapping. So you keep the lines, just erase everything else that's not overlapping. Do you guys have any questions here? We have one more, and the last one's a little bit different, so make sure you're following along. Okay, so for our first equation here, what do we want to do? Put it into y equals mx plus b form. So 2x minus y is greater than or equal to negative 3. How do I put it into y equals mx plus b form? Subtract 2x. So I have negative y is greater than or equal to negative 2x minus 3. What should I do next? Divide everything by what? By negative 1. What happens when you have an inequality and divide by a negative? You have to flip your inequality. So this greater than or equal to becomes less than or equal to. So super important. When you divide by a negative, you have to flip the sign. So instead of greater than or equal to, it becomes less than or equal to. What's negative 2x divided by negative 1? 2x. And negative 3 divided by negative 1? Plus 3. So what's my y-intercept? 3. And what's my slope? 2 over 1. So first thing I'm going to graph is what? The y-intercept. So I have a point at 3. How do I do the slope of 2 over 1? up 2, right 1. So I'm going to go up 2 to the right 1, up 2 to the right 1. Do I connect these with a solid line or dotted line? Solid line. What do I do next? I have to shade. So what should I plug in? 0, 0. So here's where I would especially plug it into the original, because if you plug it into here, this one, and you forgot to flip your sign, you would be shading in the wrong spot. So I would just plug it into the original. That way it doesn't matter if you flip your sign or not, because you're just plugging it into the original. So the original is right no matter what. So just plug it into the original. So I have 2 times 0 minus 0 is greater than or equal to negative 3. What's 2 times 0 minus 0? 0. So 0 is greater than or equal to negative 3. Is this true? Yes. So do I shade where 0, 0 is or where it's not? Where it is. And I had a solid or dotted line here? Solid. All right, now let's graph the next one. Here. So y is greater than or equal to negative 1/2 x plus 1. What's my y-intercept? 1. And what's my slope? Negative 1/2. So I'm going to put my y-intercept at 1. And how do I do the slope of negative 1/2? Down 1, right 2. So down 1, right 2, down 1, right 2, down 1, right 2. Solid line or dotted line? Solid line. And then now I need to test where I shade. What should I plug in? 0, 0. So I have 0 is greater than or equal to negative 1/2 times 0 plus 1. So 0 is greater than or equal to 1. Is this true? Nope, not true. So do I shade where 0, 0 is or where it's not? Where it's not. So I'm shading up top over here. And then the last thing I need to do is erase. Erase what's not overlapping.